Welcome to worship in the Unitarian Universalist Church of Charlotte. We've entered those sacred few days of the year when our grief does not seem out of place with the demands of daily life. It's during this time that pagans celebrate Samhain, when the boundary between the living and the dead grows very thin. Dia de los Muertos brings people out to visit with their loved ones who have died, bringing favorite foods and playing familiar songs. Others light candles in sanctuaries on All Souls Day in solemn prayer and remembrance. During these sacred days, death is not hidden from sight. We don't have to experience grief alone. It's during these days, Anna Rusamana Broski writes, that we can take time to remember those who have gone before us, to name them and identify their presence in the things around us, in checkerboards and cedar chests, the curve of a cheekbone and the turn of a phrase, in spaghetti sauce and old sweaters. By spending time and paying attention, she says, we allow things that are already there to speak to us. We can hear the voices of our ancestors in the crackling of a hearth fire or the rush of a wave upon a shore. This morning, we spend our time together remembering those we have lost and paying attention to all the ways they continue to move through us and shape our lives. Whether grief feels sharp or distant for you today, you are welcome just as you are, and you do not have to carry your grief alone. As we prepare to sing, please turn and welcome the people around you.
The chalice lighting words this morning are by Christine Robinson. In our time of grief, we light a flame of sharing, the flame of ongoing life. In this time when we search for understanding and serenity in the face of loss, we light this sign of our quest for truth, meaning, and community.
Our first reading is a poem by Maya Angelou entitled When Great Trees Fall. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder. Lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly. Our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality bound to them takes leave of us. Our souls dependent upon their nurture now shrink, wizened. Our minds formed and informed by their radiance fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. our senses restored, never to be the same, whisper to us. They existed. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed.
Our second reading this morning is by Lone Jensen from Beyond Absence. Between our first cry and our last breath, we string together precious moments of life as pearls on a string. Then something or someone breaks the strand, and the pearls scatter everywhere. And we are all down on our knees on the floor, trying to retrieve something that was precious and is now lost. A human life cannot be restrung. But we can gather together the precious memories in a deep gratitude for the time we did have together. I refuse to believe that either God or the universe is cruel. That is a human failing. Instead, I trust that nothing is ever lost. All past and present make up this moment.
When my grandma died, her absence filled the house. When my mom and grandpa came home for the first time after her death, the blanket on the back of Grandma's easy chair was rumpled. The way you don't neatly fold a blanket if you are coming back to use it soon. Grandma ate 2 pecan sandies with a glass of milk every night after dinner. And the package of pecan sandies that she had opened and resealed was still on the kitchen counter. She had been the last to put the knives and forks back in their drawers from the dishwasher. It was difficult for my grandpa to adjust to the fact that her reliable routine motion would not fill that kitchen again. It took time to feel that it was okay to donate her clothes. Stacks of periwinkle and off-white sweaters, the handbags and the sensible black and brown shoes. If you looked at the inside of these shoes, you could make out the unique shape of her feet. There were dark indents where her toes and heels had pressed downward into the soles with each step for years. When someone you love dies, you take the things they've recently touched and hold them close, trying to catch a fleeting scent or warmth lingering behind. When someone you love dies, these material things that were, of course, always inanimate, suddenly seem particularly lifeless. Emily Dickinson once called the time just after a loved one dies the hour of lead. Maya Angelou says, "Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves." Each of us carries our own stories of absence. You may have lost someone you love dearly after a long illness. You may have lost someone who made up part of your everyday life suddenly and without a chance to say goodbye. And their absence is sometimes still startling, even a long time later. For a while, it seems like this is all that grief is about figuring out how to grow accustomed to this absence, trying to feel completely the ins and outs of life without them. If we can learn how to create a new routine, a new way of life in the empty space they left behind, we will know that we are healing, that we're moving on to new interests and commitments that will help us feel more whole again, if in a different way. And that is so much of what grief is, adjusting to a loved one's absence. Author Anne Lamott writes about losing her dear friend, Pammy, about slowly trying to adjust to a world where she cannot simply pick up the phone and call when she's missing her friend. Pammy died at 37 And Lamont is haunted for years by all her friend did not get to see and do. All that was left so unsatisfyingly unfinished. In her essay, Ashes, Lamont writes about the experience of going with Pammy's husband and daughter out on a boat on a beautiful sunny day, out beyond the Golden Gate Bridge, where they've decided to scatter Pammy's ashes. Lamont says, I was able to see the deeply contradictory nature of ashes, that they are both so heavy and so light. They're impossible to let go of entirely. They stick to things, to your fingers, your sweater. We tried, she says, to strew them off the side of the boat romantically, with seals barking from the rocks on shore under a true blue sky. But they would not cooperate. They rarely will. It's frustrating, Lamont says, if you're hoping to have a happy ending, or at least a little closure, a movie moment when you toss them into the air and they flutter and disperse. They don't, she says. They cling, they haunt. They get in your hair, in your eyes, your clothes. On the face of things, it appears grief is entirely about adjusting to the absence of a loved one. That is indeed part of it, and that's difficult enough. But grief presents us with an opposing yet just as honest truth, which is that after a death, we must learn to accept that the person we've lost will always be present in our lives. The realization comes slowly that the lives of people end, but relationships survive death. Difficult and unresolved, nurturing and sustaining relationships do not end when someone dies. My grandma taught me how to crack an egg so that the shells don't fall into the batter. And she taught me that when shells slip in anyway, how to wet your pinky finger so that the shell clings to your touch and can be easily removed. When I bake, Grandma is not physically standing there by my elbow telling me what to do next and how, but I hear her anyway. I carry her with me through muscle memory. What she taught me still informs my actions, still shapes how I understand the world. Maybe when your child needs advice, you sometimes give them words your mother gave to you once, and you feel a tremor of her presence. Or you come across a letter from a dear friend long gone and remember how secure you felt with him. And the memory causes a fortifying kind of gratitude to flow through you. As waves of grief crash over us and then recede, we notice flashes of our loved one's presence, all the ways they are still with us. Psychologist Lonnie Leary wrote about the death of her father and about her own experience of grief. Leary said, "Daughter is both a noun and a verb, and I behave in ways that demonstrate that I am not finished being his daughter." We're never finished being the friend, child, partner, or parent. of someone we love fiercely and have lost. We find ever new ways of demonstrating that we are not finished being in relationship with them. We put on a song they shared with us. We order their favorite food. When we can, we finish the projects and commitments they left incomplete and find ourselves living the values they demonstrated with conviction. In words we heard earlier from Lone Jensen, a human life cannot be restrung, but we can gather together the precious memories, trust that nothing is ever lost, all past and present make up this moment. Anne Lamott, decades after her friend Pammy's death, still notices the empty and enduring absence Pammy left behind. And decades later, Lamott still notices the unmistakable, lasting presence of her friend. Lamott writes, "The secret truth is that you don't ever get over the biggest losses in your life. The good news," she says, "is that if you don't seal up your heart with caulking compound and instead stay permeable, people stay alive inside you and maybe outside of you too, forever. You can't tether them to the earth anymore," she says, "because the thread has grown too fine. All you can do is say, 'I get it. You are somewhere else now.' But little flecks of you remain like mica and rock, which glint and say, 'It was all true.'"
Memories to teach me to see the beauty
Good morning. My name is Judy Love, and I would like to share some memories of my loved ones. Ancient, moth-eaten raccoon coats scurried across the lawn. Unseen ghouls hid down the old stone well. The ghost walk path was illuminated by jack-o'-lanterns and a backlit cow skull as we clung to the endless, rough, knotted rope and shivered with the cold in our thin costumes. Listen, moaning in the vegetable garden, clanking chains in the doghouse, eerie noises emanating from under the shed. That was Mr. Coit with a borrowed artificial larynx. We recalled costume suitcase relays, toppling pennies in the flower game, squirming on balloons until they popped. The littlest and lightest were at a distinct disadvantage. Dunking for apples, drinking hot cocoa, and watching scary movies. We pretended not to be terrified. There was nothing like it. Nostalgic memories and messages pinged across the internet on All Souls Day as we loved children recalled our mother's neighborhood Halloween parties during our childhood. Sharing these memories is one way that we keep her with us. Mom died 25 years ago. We have had a lifetime of memories of this amazing woman. Losing her was devastating. Life would never be the same. It felt so final. A few months later, during her memorial service, as friends and family took turns sharing stories, poems, and songs, yellow butterflies circled and danced above their heads. We all believed it was Mom, embodied in their vivacious fluttering. Now, every time I see an eastern tiger swallowtail, I pause to say hello. She is still with me. When my dad died 10 years later, my sister said a catbird lingered in her garden all that day. Since then, whenever she hears that feline bird call, she stops to commune with Dad's winged avatar. Another sister says melodious whistling has her turn and look for him. Mementos and photographs prise open the closed walls of loss. Music and smells can overwhelm us in a moment. It has been nearly 2 years since I lost my late husband, Roger, but he is still very much with me. He doesn't have a bug or a bird correlation, maybe motorcycle, but I am surrounded by him in this home we shared for 8 years. I find myself mentioning him in conversation frequently, thankful that everyone does not roll their eyes each time. I consult him when I make decisions, knowing that he would have sage advice in every circumstance. I always ask myself, what would Roger do? I miss him when I sip my latte on the patio alone, as we would have donned winter coats to enjoy the brisk morning air, our breath and the steam from the hot coffee curling up in wispy clouds above our mugs. As it says in our song this morning, the dead are not under the earth. They are in the rustling tree. They are in the crying grass. They are in the groaning woods. They are in the moaning rocks. The dead are not under the earth. So listen more often. Those who have died have never left.
Please join me in a spirit of meditation. keeping silence together, allow yourself a moment to sit with the images and memories you carry of those you love and have lost. Kathleen McTeague writes, "In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives and bring our world forward with us, it is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living. It is right to name the power of lives well lived. We share a history with those lives. We belong to the same motion. As is the tradition of this community, we will now name our beloved dead, mindful especially of those who have died in the past year. We begin first with the names of beloved pets, those everyday companions who often manage to care for us somehow as we care for them. I invite you now to name pets you lost this past year aloud or in the silence of your heart.
Fiona.
Daisy.
Pumpkin.
You may carry with you today the very heavy grief that follows the loss of a family member or a dear friend. I invite you now to speak the names of family and friends you have lost this year aloud, or to hold them in the silence of your heart.
Gordon Benjamin Fowler, Kevin Francis Fowler,
Margie. Jean Ray Ayers.
Bobby
Jerry
Sanders,
Fred.
Pat Munger,
Ben Nassar. William Collins.
Statue Maharis. Carolyn. Dale Herrick.
Judy Gonin.
Bill Munn. Cynthia Gates.
Eric
Richard
Trump.
Blake, Sarah Lane Wilkerson,
Megan Clayton.
and we hold in blessed memory the names of those in our congregation who died this past year. Betty Robinson, Judy Gonin, Harriet Webster, Carl J. Johnson, Richard Lake, Gaynell Freeman, we remember with love all of those we have named aloud or in our hearts. In community, we feel the heaviness of their absence. In community, we give thanks for the ways they move with us still and shape our lives. Please join me in our litany of remembrance. I'll offer the plain text. Would you please respond with the words in bold? In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we never share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live. For they are now a part of us, as we remember them. Grief is such a heavy thing to carry alone. It's good to be together this morning so we can lean on one another. Welcome again to today's service. We're happy you're with us in this room or joining us remotely. We're pleased to have guests with us. Our members would like to greet you personally following the service. So if you are visiting, please raise your hand and keep it up. Members, take note of guests seated near you. After the service, invite them to join you for coffee and conversation in Freeman Hall. Should it enhance your experience of future services, you can find both a large print order of service and a personal hearing assistance device on the table at the entrance of the sanctuary. There's also an elevator available. If you'd like to learn more about us, please fill out a yellow card and place it in an offering basket later in the service. Members with a life event to share can do so on the reverse side of the card. The cards and offering envelopes are on the clipboards at the end of your row. Please begin passing them now. Visitors interested in hearing about how to become a member can talk with our membership coordinator, Kelly Green. Her contact information is on the back of your order. Again, to each of you, welcome. As we turn to the goings-on here in our congregation, I want to invite Barry Arendt to come forward to give us a Focus 2020 update.
As we gather together in this service of poignant memory today, the UUCC Focus 2020 task group that's overseeing our name reconsideration process is looking forward. We have been engaging with you to decide whether Unitarian Universalist Church of Charlotte is how we want to be known in the future. This name reconsideration process is now entering a new phase. We had our final Sunday conversation between services today in the Bernstein Room for discussing whether our current name meets criteria that we set out and agreed upon together for an ideal name. And next weekend, the task group will lead interactive dialogues on the next steps in the process. These will be similar in format to the weekend sessions many of you attended in September. This time, we will ask you to address what we've come to see as a significant issue: our institutional identity. Should we call ourselves a church or not? In addition, most of the scores of members we've heard from have expressed the view that our current name does not meet those ideal name criteria. Next weekend, the task group will propose a way forward and begin to stimulate exploration of alternatives. It's serious work, and we need your involvement. We also hope to have a little fun in the process. Please join us either Saturday, November 9th at 10 a.m. in Freeman Hall or Sunday, November 10th at 1 p.m. here in the sanctuary. And if you have questions for the task group, I will be in Freeman Hall after this service. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. If you are visiting today, we hope you'll grab a cup of coffee or tea and then head downstairs to the conference room for a conversation with a longtime member who can help you get to know us better. And after this service at 12:45, our high school youth are going to be in Freeman Hall with snacks, hoping that you will join them for small group conversations. The topic that they have chosen this year is exploring the differences in how teens and adults communicate. And they're hoping that this is a chance to get to know you better. So hope you can make it. We are sending love to Dave Lysing this morning as he recovers from a recent surgery. And on this day of remembrance, we're holding Catherine O'Grady, Kurt Merkel, Daniel Steffen, and Louis Merkel in our hearts as they mourn the death of Catherine's father. In a moment when the music is being played and the offering baskets are being passed, you are welcome, member and visitor alike, to come forward and light a candle in silence, honoring whatever joy, sorrow, or remembrance is on your heart.
Ours is an extraordinarily generous and loving community. We take care of each other at so many levels, in so many ways. I know, for I have been held in the warm embrace over and over these past years. There is no way to express the gratitude I feel for all of you, and I can honestly say that as a transplant from up north, this congregation is what sustains me. You are my Southern family. I am sure that there are many among us who feel this way. Look around you. What would our lives be like without all this? Our offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared hopes and values.
Again, the words of Kathleen McTeague. Those who have died are with us still. The lives they lived hold us steady. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, their hearts. We take them with us, and with them, choose the deeper path of living. Please be seated. Amen.